Alrighty, we are live. G'day everybody. Thanks for joining in. Great to have you here and exciting to be showing you again live tips here in Tom's tribe. I've missed you guys and really wanted to be able to connect with you again, not just through the written format, just by posting and by commenting, but also to really missed this video chat that we were of course doing way back at the start of March, and that got sort of dropped off a little based on the second round of COVID, etc., and it's launching the Art of Landscape Photography, which is the video series that we're now doing. That's every Monday night. For those who'd like to join, you can just sign up. I'll show you all the details then. But at the moment, this is a sort of two-way interaction in a sense that I'm going to talk to you. For those who are not familiar with how this goes, I'm using a piece of software that goes live straight from my computer into the group. And I see a few of you are on board. If you have any questions, all you need to do is just comment. Okay, if you comment on the post here on this Facebook Live, that way I can get to see what you're talking about and help answer any of those questions you might have. I do get to see all of your comments, okay? So that's the best way this is going to work every Tuesday. Apologise for not jumping in at 10 a.m. I had double booked myself. I had something else on. They will be at 10 o'clock, hopefully every other Tuesday. If you can't find us, just jump on the tribe here and I will post perhaps an alternative time, but I will try and do it at 10 o'clock every Tuesday morning. So really just wanting to connect with you guys, add some value, share a few tips, share a few thoughts, given that I'm working, full time on the business. Really want to be able to impart my knowledge and help you guys out in any way. So thanks for the 7 or so who have jumped on thus far. These will always be available on the tribe, okay? We'll probably put them onto YouTube as well, but they'll just sit here. So if you don't get to see them live, you will be able to catch up with these at any time, okay? Just a little tidbit. Don't plan to go for any more than 10 or 15 minutes. They're not going to be hours worth. Just a little, all right, let's talk about stitching panoramas together. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. And I can imagine that once we come out of this lockdown, it will become a lot more fluid and I'll be able to share weekly shots that I've been taking in and around the peninsula here on workshops, etc., etc. Okay, so let's jump straight into it here, guys. I wanted to share this photo that I got a couple of weeks back. We had a bit of inclement sort of weather and ended up with this sort of shot. This was taken down just down the road here from the gallery here in Mornington. This is at Snapper Point, Mornington Harbour, okay? And this one here is showing off these amazing rolling clouds we had, like waves. I posted the name of these particular clouds when I posted this shot. Okay, can't remember off the top of my head. But a few people were asking about like, how did I go about doing this? And I was talking about rows and columns and all that sort of stuff. So let's just dive straight into that today, okay? So you can see from these series of green boxes here, these are the shots that made up this one here, okay? So there are approximately, I think, about 25 shots here that made up this sequence, okay? And as you can see, what I've done is I've shot these, this has actually gone from right to left, okay? So just to show you this photo, what I'm doing is I'm moving from the top right-hand corner across and then down and across. So I've actually done two rows, so vertical orientation, starting from the top right, moving across to the top left, moving down here to the bottom row and going across. Of course, there's always got to be a stitch. There's always got to be some sort of overlap. So you'll see that as we go from, not that way, go from one way to the other, you'll see that there's overlap between them. You see this? Okay, there's overlap. I'm hand holding these photographs here, okay? This is taken with a Nikon D800 70 to 200 millimeter lens. Just looking at the info there. let me just move this bits and bobs. We were looking at 2/50th of a second at f11, ISO 400. So it was quite dark. I don't normally like to go above ISO 200, but I've just gone to 400 there just to give me a little bit more speed so I can shoot at f11. I really wanted that depth of field front to back. Okay, and this is the bottom row. So as you can see, when I'm shooting this panorama, I've not only got overlap left to right between the frames, but I've also got overlap at the top from where I've shot that first row. So we saw that cloud structure in the previous shots here, up in here, you see? There's that same cloud. Okay, so when we're doing two rows, we've got to make sure, and I did this by looking at the land and making sure, right, in this panorama, I want to ensure that that land is in all of the shots regardless of whether I'm doing the top row or the bottom row. So as you can see here, the land is at the bottom of the frame, okay, keeping it nice and steady. And then we move down to the bottom section, okay, and there we've still got the land, okay. It's not right at the top of the frame, but I'm getting plenty of the foreground in. And that just means that when we come to stitch these photos together, not only have we overlapped on the sides, but we've also overlapped this top frame from this bottom frame. Does that make sense if I drew triangles around this? Let's just jump out of this for a second. Now, how you go about actually stitching these together. Select the first image that you want to put together, finger on the shift key and click inside of the last photo. Finger on the shift key, click inside of the last photo, and that selects all of the photos in between the first one that you've clicked on and the last one. And then if we go up here to the menu options and we say menu photo, photo merge panorama. So photo merge panorama. The shortcut on the keyboard is Control M for those using Macs. It's going to take a sip of the coffee. Any questions for the moment, guys, just while this is doing its thing? Just send me a message, just comment. You just comment to send me any sort of message here, guys. Just let me know if there's anything you need. Can you hear me okay, I hope? It's a bit hard when it's a one-way interaction. Now this is going to take a little bit of time to stitch together. These are raw files. They're each 36.2 megapixels, okay? D800, 36 megapixels each. There's a fair bit of overlap between them, but it's what my computer's now doing is it's creating small JPEG photographs from those raw files, and then it is stitching together what is exactly what it says here. It's creating a panorama preview. So it's not stitching the raw files together yet. It's stitching together what should look like once, if I decide to go ahead with that projection or that stitching. Now, Barry just said, asked the question, do I do right to left, left to right? It doesn't really matter, Barry, where you start. It actually probably doesn't even matter what order you do it in, what sequence, etc. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to do rows and columns. I don't often do rows and columns, but I only had a 70 to 200 mil lens on me on this day. So the only way I could fit all this in was to actually break up the picture into those two rows. Does that make sense? Because 70 mil was the widest lens I had. You could easily have done this with a wide angle lens, done this in one photo and just cropped the middle out of it to create a panorama. We could have done this with a slightly longer lens and done horizontal photos and stitched those together. We could have gone vertical and done a series of vertical photos and stitched them together. I needed to go to the next level, which was, shit, hold on, I've got a 70 mil lens here. I can't fit top to bottom everything I want here. I can't get all of that all the way down to here. So I need to think about, hold on, how do I do that? Oh yeah, I need to break this up and I'll shoot two rows. I'll shoot the sky as one row and then I'll shoot the water as another row. Now this has stitched this together really nicely, as you can see. And I'll answer your question next. Thanks, Majek. Now, what we can do here is a couple of different things. Generally speaking, the wider the angle of lens you use, the more distortion and the harder it can be sometimes for the software to stitch it together. The longer the lens, less distortion, much easier for something like Lightroom or any other panoramic software to stitch this together in order for it to not have any seams or any obvious stitch marks, or the fact that it is a series of photos, not just one, okay? So I'm very blessed to have that lens on today, okay? Now, with that, if your panorama doesn't stitch together right, sometimes you might need to use a different projection. This has all got to do with the distortion of your lens. I'm not going to explain spherical, cylindrical, and perspective, other than some work better than others. I'm developing a Lightroom course at the moment called the Lightroom Landscape. Yeah, the Lightroom Landscape. I think that's what I call it. Yeah, and I'm going to be explaining what works better in one situation than another, because sometimes these projections suit the way you've shot the picture as well as the orientation of the camera. I won't go into that now, but 90% of the time spherical is the one that will do the job for you. Okay, putting that aside, the next thing, no, this is handheld, Swati. Yeah, so no tripod. You don't have to use a tripod to stitch together panoramas, but you must be aware that if you're hand holding and you're moving the camera and you're moving it relatively quickly, because you don't want the whole scene to move, waves to move too much, clouds to move too much, boats to move too much, that you don't want to rush the frames, because if you rush it, you might not finish taking a photo before you've moved the camera to take the next photo, and then all of a sudden you start blurring your photos. You've got blurred images because you've moved the camera at the same time that the shutter is open. Okay. Thanks, Cam. Thanks for joining in. What's more important, RAM or solid state hard drive? Well, I'd go both. If you're wanting to stitch together big panoramas like this, get a solid state hard drive and get at least 16, if not 32. RAM is so cheap these days, and those solid state hard drives are beginning on a lot less. There goes the fire engine. I'd go with both. I'd go with both. Okay. Something we're going to do here now is that we can then say, right, okay, how do we go about filling in these white edges? And these white edges have occurred because not all of the frames were lined up properly. It's natural, it's fine, it happens. Don't beat yourself up about it. This chunk here is missing because on the top row that I started shooting first, I started a bit more over to the right. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner, I didn't quite go as far to the right as I did with this first one. So there's just a bit missing, that's fine. There's a couple of ways around this. If you grab this boundary warp, this slider here, this is relatively new to Lightroom, a couple of years old, I guess. It stretches the picture, okay, to fill in those white boundaries, you see? Just drag it all the way to the right, and then all of a sudden all of that white border's gone. And that actually works in our favor too, because sometimes towards the edges it can sort of dip off, have a bit of curvature. So what that's doing is it's sort of correcting it, which is really nice. The other way around that is to click Fill Edges, and that's a lot like Content Aware Fill. That will add extra pixels. Boundary Warp doesn't add extra pixels, it's just stretching the picture to fill in those white spots. It's very clever. Fill Edges creates pixels and puts them into these white boxes here. Sometimes that can mean that you can actually see spots where it hasn't done a very good fill, for example, or you can see that I can see a stitch mark there. I can see where it's filled in there. So that's probably my least desired way of doing it. You can also auto crop, and cropping, obviously, it just crops out all of the white. Lightroom knows that that white boundary is not something that you want, and it just crops it out, you see? So you're actually cropping in on the picture. My most preferred method is this boundary warp, because you're not cropping in on the picture, so you're not losing pixels, you're correcting distortion, and you're not filling in edges to perhaps have any sort of obvious fill marks, lines, stuff like that. Then when we click Merge, in the top left-hand corner here, Lightroom is now creating that panorama. It's grabbing all of these photos here, okay, and it's stitching them together. I'm going to stop that for now because I don't want it to take up the RAM on my computer. This is the finished product, okay? but I'm just going to go back a few steps because, in fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a virtual copy. I want to keep that one because that's my finished product, but I'm going to create a new one here, create virtual copy, okay? I'm going to end up with 2 photos that are the same, okay? And there we go, 1, 2. I'm going to go to this original here, not this one. Come on, it just skipped. There we go. And I'm just going to reset this photo because I want you to see what it looks like. Let's not reset. Let's go back to what... I'm going to go to this one here, which will have... I want to go back here to this, okay? So this is what the stitched panorama would look like, okay? And it's full of goodness because if we actually press I on the keyboard, you will actually see that this is 25,000 pixels across. So what does that mean? If you divide that by 300, that's how many inches across this picture is. So that goes in about 80 times. So 80 times 300 is 25,000. So this is an 80-inch cross, so 2 meter wide print by 1100 high. 1100, that's roughly 40 inches high. So it's a roughly 2-to-1 ratio. So it's about 2 meters wide by 1 meter high without me having to upsize this photo at all. So straight out of the camera, this is already a 2 meter print. That's pretty awesome. It means I can crop in on this if I want and I'm not going to lose too much info, so to speak. Okay, so that's good too. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just treating this like any other photograph. How do I want this to look better? This is the trick because now I have to start to try and replicate what I've done here on the left-hand side. Okay, let's play around with this a second. How I approach any of my editing is roughly, this is done on auto-correct here. Why is that done on auto-correct? Because I did an auto-correct when I was stitching it together. I didn't show you that. Let's just take that back. Just bear with me 2 seconds, guys. I'm just not wanting these auto-corrects here. I just want this to look pretty straight up. That's how it came out of the camera. Okay, so how I encourage you to approach your editing is to basically just say to yourself, what would I do to this photograph in order to make it look better? What's wrong with it? What can I do better? Okay, and there's a couple of things here. Just looking at the histogram, it's a little low. It's a little bit, although on my screen the whites look pretty white, it's not. So let's grab that white slider and let's drag it up to the right here. Not all the way because we don't want to blow out the highlights, okay? Just take it back a step. And that sky's looking pretty good, although we're going to add some menace to that. The foreground's looking dull, so let's draw a gradient up from the bottom, okay? Finger on the shift key just to keep that nice and level. We could go up with exposure, but that's probably going to make it look a little wishy-washy. Why don't we grab the whites slider and drag that all the way up to the right. Let's just keep that on. It is still looking a bit dull. Let's drag that up a bit to here. Maybe a bit of contrast as well. I'm just really wanting to make it brighter, but I'm also wanting to make it like punchy. Okay. Okay, pretty happy with that. Okay. Next thing, what else should we do here? Let's make this sky a bit more menacing. Let's drag a gradient over the sky, but rather than lightening it, we're going to darken it. Let's sex this up a bit, hey? I'm going to go a bit more than that. That's pretty good for now. Let's see where we're at. Let's just, before and after, just using the backslash key underneath the delete key on the keyboard. So we've balanced this out a bit. Let's use the Haze. Now, I normally wouldn't use the Haze unless it was an aerial. But you see, Haze adds clarity, contrast, and saturation. So that's doing a pretty good job there. Let's brighten this whole thing up a bit. Let's add a bit more contrast because it's again, I'm trying to make this brighter, but then I'm also trying to make sure that it's still got that contrast, that menace. We don't want it to be wishy-washy. Okay. Now, the other thing is too, I'm looking at this photo and I probably want the edges to be a little darker. Okay, there's some highlights that are blown out there, so let's just peek back that white slider a bit. Okay. I'm also going to add a vignette, because on the edges, I just want that to be really sort of focused in on the boat itself. Okay, you see this here? See how that's worked nicely just to darken the edges there? Really draw our eye in on the middle. Sometimes when you draw quite a heavy vignette like that, you need to go back here and just lighten things up a little bit more here. Okay, now we're getting to the point that I want it to be. Now we're getting into something else, yeah? Okay, the other thing is I'm not really happy about this color. It's a bit yellow. I want it to be more blue. Well, the opposite of yellow is blue. So let's just tone down that color a bit, because I don't want it to be yellowy. I want it to be like steely blue. And there's two ways I'm going to get that. One is by changing the color temperature so that it's less yellow and it's more blue. The second way is probably to desaturate it a little and not have it be as colorful, sort of like go a gunmetal blue. That's gone too far. The computer's just lagging a bit this morning. Hope you're still with me, guys, and this is making sense. You're going to be able to review this video several times. I've not explained everything because this would take an hour to explain everything. I'm just wanting to show you the process that I'm going through in order to achieve this result. Let's really back off that saturation. I've got the blue that I want. I've got rid of the yellow, but I want a gunmetal gray. And I've done that just by taking down the saturation. I know most landscape photographers will not tell you to desaturate the photograph unless you're turning it black and white. I do this fairly often with my stormy skies. I take the color out, and I also add clarity because, again, that's going to give me that sort of gunmetal look as well. Okay, now this is personal taste. I've seen professional photographers edit where you go, oh my God, it looked good 3 steps ago. You know, you've taken it too far, you've over-processed it. I can understand that. Sometimes I revisit photos and I say to myself, yep, I just went way too far on that one there. I need to revisit it. That's okay. You could kind of go for the look you want, and then sometimes you just need to soften it up a little. It just depends on the mood. That's why I always really like using this / key on the keyboard, and that gives me the before and after. And that way I can really evaluate, hold on a second, I started with this, didn't really like it, I've gone to that, am I happy with where I've taken this? Have I done the photograph justice? Is this somewhat what it looked like? This is more menacing than what it looked like, absolutely. But this is wishy-washy, this hasn't got impact, okay? So this is more what I want. I want to show off the definition in the clouds. I want to increase the contrast. I want there to be bright highlights, dark shadows. I want this sky, this sky to be somewhat soft and menacing, but then I want this water to be that beautiful, iridescent almost, silvery water, like exactly like we've got. You don't have that in this original, but you do certainly have it in this finished shot. And that's all got to do with the gradients that I've used in order to brighten that water, but also the clarity and the dehaze has just teased the beautiful detail out of this photograph. Now, this hasn't even been sharpened, and my eyes are starting to bleed already how sharp that is. Just amazing detail, okay? So I think I'm going to leave it there. If there's any further questions or comments, let me know. Comment here if you've enjoyed what you've seen today. That will encourage more people perhaps to look at this same video again as it sits here on the Tribe Facebook group. They might look at the comments and go, oh yeah, wow, that sounds like Tom did a good job there. So if you've enjoyed the video, just leave a comment and that'll just give me encouragement to keep doing this every Tuesday at 10 a.m, not 12. But I hope what I've done here has added some value. So let's just revisit what we did. Let's go back and have a look and see how that compared to here's one I did earlier. So you see, this is one I processed straight after I took these photographs. A little bit different to the one I just did there now. Slightly different color, slightly different crop, slightly different exposure, stuff like that. But it doesn't matter, it's all pretty much the same. Series of photographs taken in a vertical format, 2-row pano stitch, 1 row for the sky, 1 row for the water, overlapping, stitched them together, brought them into Lightroom, okay, looked at them and said to myself, What is it that we do and don't like about this photo? What can we do to make this better? Okay, and series of graduated filters, one over the sky, one over the water, contrast, haze, adding a vignette to darken the corners, okay, changing in color temperature to make it less yellow, more blue, taking out some saturation, adding a bit more clarity to finish it off. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's a dirty word, and I hope you've got something from this today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tell everybody else who's in the tribe about Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m, okay, with another tip. Thanks, David. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, look, the idea about these Tuesday tips is to perhaps just throw a little nugget at you, throw something at you that you might know of already, but I expand on it a bit more, and so you get a bit more out of it. Just like today, I'm sure there's plenty of you who know already how to stitch panoramas together, but sometimes it's the thought process or the process that I've gone to stitch that pano together. Some of you may never have thought about doing rows of panos, okay, rather than just a single frame, perhaps cropping it or stitching just individual photos together without doing rows. But also the thought process in coming to edit that photo, going for that look and the way I went about that. It's just a problem-solving exercise. It's just a matter of looking at the photo and saying, what don't I like about it? How could I improve it? I hope I make it look easy because I've been doing this for so long. But it's all about knowing the tools in Lightroom and how to use them and how to apply them, okay? And that's what I hope to teach you a lot more by doing these little tips, and also through the Art of Landscape Photography video series that I do on Monday nights, and also that Lightroom landscape video series that I'm developing at the moment that'll take you through all of these tools in Lightroom very comprehensively. That's going to be launched in the next few weeks, okay guys? But thanks everyone for watching today. I've really enjoyed that, really enjoyed connecting with you again. So I hope you got some value. We'll see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Thanks guys, take care everyone. See you later, bye.